Welcome to Global Health and Wellness Practitioners YouTube channel, where we're giving exposure and connecting great practitioners while providing a platform for them to leave a message and a piece of their legacy on. For them to leave a message and a piece of their legacy on.
Hey, I'm Don Zane Curfman. Very happy to be part of the Global Health and Wellness Practitioners. I'm a Sansista Espiritista Brujo Curandero, which really just means I'm a spiritual healer. I help people heal all aspects of their life, not only their physical bodies and elements, but also how that relates to their economy, their ecology, their community, how to heal all of these, the whole holistic person, and to bring them back into alignment so that they can truly see what their spiritual gifts are and how to offer that to the world, to be an inspiration to the whole world. I'm so happy to be a part of this. Thank you.
We have to grow as a healer has to grow into the healing, and we're all on a constant trajectory of growth, a never-ending spiral that's tightening and getting closer and closer to what we might call a universal truth. Uh, and as the healer, especially when we're speaking of spiritual healing, like I was saying, it's an art form. It's not something where you do A, B, and C each time and that creates the effects or creates the healing. You have to learn how to fall into process with the client, how to fall into process with them, because just because you were able to heal Tom's prostate cancer doesn't mean that Joe's prostate cancer is healed the same way. Each time it's a unique and individual process work that we fall into, because every person has different things to learn, including the healer. The healer has to learn how to be open to the miraculous, to the random. And that's another place where it's different than a technician or a technique. In that way, when we think of it as a science, we're thinking we want an A, B, and C process that will always produce this result. Spiritual healing says that's not possible, and everyone heals differently. Everyone heals in their own time. You might work with, like I was saying, Tom, and it could be a miraculous healing that happened in one session. You might work with Joe, and you might work with Joe for 6 months. He thinks nothing happened, and 6 months later, he has a remission of whatever. Or you might work with someone who has now suddenly rediscovered well-being and happiness in their lives, but their diagnosis has not changed one bit. Though they may have been terminal, they now are able to uh, live far past their diagnosis.
And how is the Peruvian culture now, with what I've been hearing with so many cultures leaving their villages and going to bigger cities, or the younger ones? Where are they in the process?
Well, right now the whole world is in flux. There's a major shift going on because of the coronavirus pandemic and all of that. We're all finding different ways to survive now. For the traditional villages, there was a real movement up until the 80s of them moving away from their traditional wisdom and spiritual practices to take up the indoctrinated practices of the church and, different Western mindsets. There was a real move toward that. And it was with the release of their spiritual traditions to the West that shifted. When they started seeing Gringo come there, and Gringo having their mesas, and Gringo doing prayers into the coca leaves and doing the wisdom of their ancestors, they started to develop respect once again for their ancestors because they were trained to be like Gringo. So now Gringo's coming there and doing this. Well, then there must be something of value that their ancestors had, that they had been indoctrinated to believe that was completely valueless and based on superstition. So now they saw the Gringo in the 80s and 90s coming there and wanting to learn these traditions, and that revitalized the indigenous traditions themselves. I'm not saying that there weren't people who were still practicing them, but then it became something bigger where it became part of tourism. And today, if you look at tourism in Peru, you're going to find that it's almost all spiritual tourism. It's almost all based around these cultures. And that's something that's relatively new, starting in the late 80s and 90s uh, in that area. So now there is a revitalization in their own cultures of honoring these traditions. And of course, with the Andes, there is that idea of Yanantan and the idea of inclusiveness. So the traditions are actually changing. They're bringing in more Western elements. And from maybe a strict anthropological standpoint, that is seen as a negative, but in their own culture, that's seen as a positive. They believe that this is the age of reencounter when we are coming back together and sharing all of our wisdom with one another to create the new spiritual traditions as such. So, there's a real revitalization. Right now, with COVID, though, a lot of changes have happened. So now we know the tourism industry has kind of collapsed in Peru because of lockdowns. So now they no longer have the same flow with income coming in. So now they are, without a doubt, suffering a little bit more. But then on the other hand, because they did stay traditional, they have the community to rely on. Because in Peru, the indigenous people can't have jobs. There's real problem with racism within Peru, and the indigenous people are treated like dogs there. So they really can't work in the restaurants or the hotels or anything like that. So tourism was their only way of making modern economy and being part of the modern economy. Luckily, they still have their traditional villages. They still have their traditional farms. They still have their traditional ways to fall back on during this period.
I like what you said with the merging of a spiritual tradition of something that's coming forward into the future now.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of especially the Andean spiritual traditions, the traditional or the indigenous traditions, was this sharing of wisdom between medicine people. They have their own way of doing it, of course, and they have their own cultural understandings of it. But we, as part of their tradition, like the people I train, and we weren't born in those pastoral lands. We weren't born to these older traditional ways of life. So we have to adapt it to our modern way of living. And this is something that was a time honored tradition among the indigenous people, is that they every generation redefines the spiritual wisdom, the spiritual knowledge for their lives. And if they're not able to redefine it and it can't have any practical importance to them in the current life, it's forgotten because they're a very practical people. It's not about sentimentality. It's not, oh, grandpa did it this way, so I have to do it this way. If grandpa did it that way, but no one else can make it work that way, then there's a new way that has to be found.
and
So that's very important.
and I think it's good to honor the tradition that you come from, because it's, even if we personally want to get rid of our tradition that we grew up with, that's taking a part of us out. And
Uh,
so there's,
yep.
like, there's no good or bad to merge them.
Absolutely, to merge them and to have respect for our ancestors, to wherever they come from. We all are indigenous people. Colonialism, colonization happened to all of us. We're all suffering from the devastating effects of it. We're all trying to find our spiritual and our cultural and our individual sovereignty in this world. And we've all been indoctrinated with that colonial mindset, this power over, this domination. Um, and once again, that's just another place where we have to discover that harmonious energy between opposing forces, because that has always been a part of humanity. It's not something that just started in one place at one time. There had always been within our creature the potential to dominate, to move in that fashion. And there's always been the more communal part of us. So in the past, through the past centuries, what we have seen is a real fight between these two ideas, the more communal idea and the more dominating idea. And each time, whichever one's more powerful overtakes the other. We're hoping, and we call it the Terra Paipacha, which means the age of remembering ourselves. We're hoping that in this time, we're able to find a way to harmonize these two forces together into a new force. And that will lead us into a golden age of humanity. Otherwise, we're just going to keep this we're going to just keep this back and forth happening, and that's not going to help us progress. It's just going to lead to more suffering. So we're really trying to find, we see it as the conquering lion and the communal servant, how the two can come together and work together for the betterment of all.
Hmm. Beautiful. And I think what you said too, coming to this place of where we remember the sovereignty of each individual and
Absolutely,
honor.
that's so important right now because the colonial mindset, we're still in it. We're still being informed by it. The very way, capitalism, communism, socialism, these are all colonial mindsets. These are all the economy, monotheism of different forms. They're all dominating over. They're all a domination game. With the idea, it's all based on the idea that if we crush out all opposition, then we can have peace. If we make everything the same, one homogeny, then we'll have peace among all people and nations because everyone will believe the same way. But the truth of the matter is, we were born to be dynamic individual souls with unique experiences with the world and the spiritual world. So that can never be. We can never have a single pole that all of humanity is based off of. And that's what these dominator traditions have discovered, and is that you can't dominate your way into peace. You can't remove all differences to create unity. All you create is a bunch of broken people who are going to strike out and try to find their sovereignty again.
You can't break or you can't get rid of the hoocha.
Yeah, you can't. There's no reason to get rid of hoocha. We need it. It's part of our life. In this middle world, we have a three-world model of existence, and in this middle world, it is a balanced dualism. It isn't about getting rid of the dualism. It's about how do we balance or harmonize the dualism, and that's what everything created in this world is. It's created from opposing forces, the friction of two things coming together to create a third. That is the beauty of the world we live in. And, the idealism that the West has is ungrounded idealism. It's like a kite with no ground wire or with no tail that is going to just crash back to the ground because it's trying to create a high ideal without really seeing the reality. And in all the indigenous traditions, the spirituality is to help us to accept the reality around us, not to disbelieve it or to move ourselves away from the reality. We're trying to accept the reality more and more as it is presented to us. And these spiritual traditions give us the tools to face reality in that way. We call it the kausai puri, which means to walk or navigate the energies of life. And it's like surfing. That's what we're really learning to do. Surf the duality.
And it's like an acceptance.
Absolutely. An acceptance and a celebration of differences. I can't get away from that because that really is the heart of what the Andes has to teach us spiritually. What this ancient tradition that was preserved so well by the Caro Indian, what that really teaches us is that we can have harmony in opposition, that opposing forces can create something beautiful. Male and female create a new life, a child, a birth. Water and earth feed seeds. You know, all these opposing forces as we see them in our culture are actually harmonious forces. So we're trying, and that's another thing, especially at the level that I teach. I'm trying to help people find the harmony in life, not the balance. Balance is almost violent. It's almost like pounding something into shape. It's almost like a dominating idea. We're not trying to find balance. We're trying to find harmony. And harmony is where two notes start to ring in a pleasant way. They're not the same note, but we find the interval that is pleasant. And it's almost like fine tuning our experience or our reality.
Thank you, Zane.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Oh, I could stay on here, but
I understand. There's so much there, and I can't wait to see how you patch this all together into a cohesive message, you know, and what you keep and what you take out. I can't wait to see your artistry here.
yeah, I'm gonna have a day of fun with that.
Absolutely.
I love the harmony. I just love the acceptance of. It's just such great traditional wisdom passed down. I'm like, my God.
Absolutely, and you know, like I was saying before, it's not so much philosophical. We base it in philosophy. We base our ideas on philosophy, psychology, theology, you know, theories. They don't. They live in a world that just is. You know, if you ask them the deeper meaning or why something works, they can't even explain that to you. They don't know why this healing works this way and these techniques work the way they do. They just do. That's why they held on to them, because they just do. They're very heart-based people, where we in the West are a very mind-based people. So it's bringing those types of people together now, and this is the age of the regathering, the age of reweaving our tapestry as humanity. As we come from four corners of the ancient world, we're all bringing our traditions, our cultures, our ancestry, our wisdom together, and we're weaving a brand new tapestry of life that is going to change the way life functions.
So thank you, Zane, for joining us and being open to sharing all this wisdom with us and helping us move forward into understanding clearer and growing.